Next, we will move on to the item that was originally scheduled first, which is a presentation on our housing strategy related to the COVID-19 disaster.
Yeah, and while we're pulling up that presentation, this is Mandy DeMeo again, and we have Nefertiti Jackman, and she is going to be providing an overview of the rent program, the relief of emergency needs for tenants, and give you an update on where we are. It's a very exciting time in the rent program. I'll turn it over to Nefertiti.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, this will be a brief update, let you know where we are since applications began coming in last month in August. If you could move to the next slide for me. Thank you. This morning, I'll briefly provide an update on the budget, overview of the program structure and eligibility, as well as highlight the tenant stabilization services, our marketing and outreach strategy, the applicant data, as well as go over some of the program enhancements. Thank you. Next slide. And so the rent budget is primarily funded with CARES Act funding, over $12.6 million in federal funds, along with $2.6 million of funding from the CDBG-CV dollars, as well as $2.5 million in general funds. So we have nearly $500,000 for targeted community outreach, which I'll also go over in a little bit more detail. Next slide. The structure, some of this was shared at the July meeting. Just want to re-emphasize and update a few points on here. Our partners include HACA, CDR, and community-based organizations to help with getting the word out, helping people apply for the assistance and helping them with the documentation, uploading all of those forms to the application portal. The goal throughout the program period is to pay approximately 2,000 rents monthly from August, for September through January 2021. And it is through a randomized selection process. And it was decided this morning, which is really important, we will have our next randomized selection to take place September 14th at noon. And so we want to highlight that because we really want to make sure that more people we want to make sure that the numbers continue to stay high for the people who are applying for the funding. The program does serve households at 80% medium family income and below. We were able to design a program that funds people with traditional as well as non-traditional lease agreements. They can't have duplication of benefits, and they must demonstrate that the household has been financially impacted by COVID, and they must reside within Austin's full purpose jurisdiction. The benefit for this program is a full contract rent payment, which is paid directly to the landlord. Households that are below 30% median family income are eligible for 3 months of rental assistance. Thank you. Next slide. As we shared, one of the things that we wanted to make sure we included with this next iteration of the rent assistance program is to make sure that we provided services in addition to direct rental assistance, which includes the eviction defense services, as well as tenant and landlord mediation with community-based organizations to provide over $400,000 in eviction defense services and tenant landlord mediation services. In addition to that, we have allocated approximately $600,000 for persons who are eligible eligible for this program to pay their landlords in the event that there are fees that are in addition to the rent that they owe. If we're able to negotiate some type of settlement or agreement, these funds will be used to pay the landlord and make the landlord whole. In the, which we hope will be rare instances, in the rare instance that persons are going to face eviction, we have allocated $280,000 in moving, for moving and storage fees, and also to help households, who need to be moved or find a new location, because we do understand in not every situation, a tenant will be prevented from being evicted. Next slide, please. Part of our success with the first rent program was the outreach strategy in which we partner with community-based organizations to get the word out. We will continue to, or we want to build upon that success and reach people where they work and live. I have a very strategic focus reaching communities of color, essential workers, and then we will partner with community-based organizations to really tap into their networks, their expertise, and help reach some of the vulnerable communities. This outreach strategy will include direct mail, AISD programs, PARD rec centers, and getting flyers to these various resources and organizations. We have also held a number of rent webinars for community-based organizations, and we had webinars for landlords, and we've received feedback that those were very helpful for the landlords who attended and participated and received information regarding the rent program. Next slide, please. We are working with community-based organizations to provide over $400,000 in funding to Partners Experience so that we can really maximize our impact in getting the word out. We need assistance informing the public about rent through phone calls, emails, hosting their own webinars, and then posting the information through their social media. We also could use assistance helping people really understand their eligibility, helping individuals create email addresses, and as well as uploading documentation and making sure they're pulling the right proofs of form, which I will share that has been one of the delays that our partners have experienced. Processing the application is basically just the information that applicants are providing, and making sure they have the right documentation could really speed up the process. Next slide, please. I just want to share that this information, we get updates on a daily basis, even through the weekend. The data that I'm sharing with you this morning is current as of September 3rd. As of that date, we had over 7,800 applications that were started, and these were not actually submitted, but we had over 7,800 applications that were started, over 1,500 that were denied based upon the information that was provided, and we had a total of 3,900 applications that were submitted to date this morning. That is over, I think, 4,400 applications, and of those submitted, 2,400 will receive reminder notifications. Basically, that's the remaining number of those applications that are incomplete. We want to really encourage people to complete their applications if they need assistance. Some of the important information that we've seen about the applicants who are applying. Pre-COVID income was about $27,000, almost $28,000, and their reported current income is about $14,830. which is about a 50% decline in their income. So we really see why this assistance is really important. Please keep in mind the asterisks indicate that this is a combined average. So this is for households 30% and below, as well as 80% and below. So it's all of those households. 77% of the applicants are 30% at 30% MFI, and 62% are female-headed households. And so we are seeing a number of indications that people applying for the assistance are falling in line with the characteristics of what would describe households that are vulnerable to displacement. 21% have reported head of households as being African American or Black, and 36 have reported the head of household as Hispanic. Some of the additional support services that we have outlined on the portal that people are stating that they need help with include utility assistance. We've seen 42% requesting support for utilities. 11% have reported needing eviction prevention services, and 4% have reported that they need assistance with tenant relocation services. Next slide, please. As a result of that, and as a result of feedback that we've heard from council members, as well as the data that we receive on a regular basis, our goal is to design a program that is responsive to community needs. We want to make sure that the program is sensitive to those needs of our city. The applicants are not required to have a social security number, and we see that approximately 93% of persons applying did submit a social security number, but that is not a requirement. Applicants can be in a contractual relationship for rent outside of a traditional lease agreement. And then we are also examining how we can improve the program so that it's designed to provide a warm handoff for persons who need additional services. So we are working on that, and because we want to make sure that we eliminate as many barriers as possible for people needing this assistance. Next slide, please. And basically, this is just a timeline of where we are. The program launched in August. We're right now in the beginning of the program. We are in the process of finalizing our community outreach contracts, which will be awarded this month, as well as the tenant stabilization services contract. So the final program applications will be received in December. Even though the program will continue until January, we will stop taking applications in December or when program funds have been committed. And next slide. Here is the contact information to the rent assistance program. It's austintexas.gov/rent. Persons can also email austinrent@cdrassociates.com, and the call center is open Monday through Friday from 8 until 6 p.m. And the number is listed there, 512-488-1397. And that's basically all I have for you this morning. The next slide is for questions, if there are any.
Thank you, Ms. Jackie. Any questions for our staff? I have a quick question. You mentioned that September 14th, you're doing the next choosing of, fairly and randomly from the people who qualify. Did you already do one selection? Or is this the first one for Rent 2.0?
No, this is not the first one. This is the second one. The first one was completed on August 26th, and we had not planned to announce these because what we hope is that people will just apply as they need assistance. But what we saw is that there was a peak in the number of applicants right before that last randomized drawing on the 26th of August. So that's why we decided that we're going to go ahead and announce the next one.
I think that's useful for people to know. You know, my experience was when people knew it was August 26th, you know, local news stations were more willing to cover it. People understood that there was a sense of urgency. And that was my next question, was whether you saw a spike coming up to the 26th. And then how many people did y'all select for the 26th?
For the 26th, we started with a smaller selection. There was a total of 500, and we are continuing to go through that. We want to see what the process is going to look like. What we do see is that people still need some guidance submitting the right documentation. We can handle more, but we're going to start with the small, as this is our first run, and then we definitely have the capacity to do more, but we're still trying to get all of the information for the initial applicants that were drawn the first time.
Great, and then you'll be able to do a lot more people again. You know, you might ramp it up from this group, and then you're talking about picking a lot more folks on September the 14th. So it sounds like you're potentially asking for help in the community and from us to get the word out before September 14th again. So
Yes.
People who really need to apply. Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
And Councilmember, this is Mandy DeMayo. One thing I want to make sure, even though this is our randomized sort of all of the applicants who have submitted applications thus far, there still will be no deadline per se. It will be a rolling deadline. So if you get your application in on September 15th, we'll still be considering you in the next randomized sort. And if you were not selected in the first randomized sort, your application rolls forward. So you only need to apply once, and you will constantly be considered in each of the randomized sorts.
Correct.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from members of council? I think it's also really important to keep reminding folks about the continued eviction moratorium, both by our local government and now by the CDC, that covers virtually everybody that would lose their home. And so really important to get that message out to the community that you wouldn't get kicked out for lack of payment, but you still
owe rent.
But not getting kicked out doesn't mean that the rent is paid, and so really important for you to apply.
Right, absolutely.
Councilmember Kitchen.
I just wanted to follow up on a discussion that we had in one of our meetings. I think it may be at a COVID meeting about the relationship between this program and people experiencing homelessness. At that time, I understood from our conversation that there's some availability for folks that are staying in extended stay motels, but we also had some conversation about how to handle or how to do a warm handoff for folks that don't have a home and are homeless and so wouldn't be eligible for this program. So I know that was something you all were thinking about figuring out. So I just wanted to check in to see if you had had a chance to think about what that might look like.
Right. That's one of the things that I mentioned is the program enhancements and what we can do to ensure that people who don't necessarily need direct rental assistance, they might be homeless, experiencing homelessness. They might need utility assistance. We are looking at the program. We ran out of time. We met this morning. We've been talking about that since the conversation that we had with you. We don't exactly know, and so I don't want to put anything out there. We have looked at a number of different things. Right now, what people receive, for those of you who aren't familiar with the portal, they receive a referral number or a link to a website for the various services. We want to do something more, aggressive or customer service friendly, so that we can either pull those names and put them directly in contact with the service providers that have the assistance. So we're just looking at the best way to do that, and we want to make sure that no one falls through the gaps. And as soon as we have something that makes sense, even if we have to continue to tweak it, we will follow up and let you know. But that's on the top of our list.
Thank you very much. The idea there, of course, for those who weren't part of that conversation, is just so that if folks are not eligible for the program, instead of just referring them and them having the potential to get lost, which happens a lot with this population, there was a more direct kind of referral made. So thank you for thinking through how to do that.
Yes.
Thank you. Any more questions? This program is so important, really important to make sure nobody loses their home. And thank you for the efforts getting the word out to the community. Seems like really low-income folks and folks of color are hearing about it and applying, people from all over the city applying. I would like to see more people in the Latino community apply. It matched the percentage of Latinos in the population, but probably underrepresented the number of lower income Latinos in the population. So we will continue to work on that as well.
And council member, this is Mandy DeMeo. We are carefully watching those numbers and the demographics of the folks who are applying, and certainly those folks who will be receiving funding. And with respect to the Hispanic Latinx population, I do want to point out that we scrubbed our marketing budget numbers and determined that we are going to be spending more than 50% of our direct marketing on the Hispanic Latinx population. So we are really mindful of reaching out to those populations hardest to serve, and also those populations that are underrepresented based on what we're seeing and what we feel like we should.
Thank you. Mayor?
I was going to say, Mandy, in doing that work, are you working with the Austin Public Health, which is doing considerable outreach right now to that community? Maybe there's a way that everyone who shows up for a test or for public health support receives information about the rental assistance. Absolutely.
And I will say over the last, I think it was this past weekend, we had a run on flyers. It was a combined effort between us and Austin Public Health. And we have printed information and distributed to all of the testing centers, public health centers. So yes, we are working closely with Austin Public Health and anticipate that will be one way we will be able to effectively get the word out.
I should have known.
Always good to check. Anything else before we head to our last item? Thank you to everybody for working on this. Again, if people want to apply, is it austintexas.gov/
Rent. I'm sorry. Rent. Yes. RENT.
austintexas.gov/rent. Really important. So apply.
Yeah, it will take you to frequently asked questions and give you a direct link to the application portal.